The moment an avoidant realizes they broke your heart isn't loud, it's terrifyingly quiet. It hits them when the noise is gone, when you stop explaining, stop chasing, stop fighting to be understood. At first, they told themselves you were too emotional, too needy, too much. But now your absence feels heavier than your presence ever did. They replay the moments they dismissed, the messages they ignored, the love they didn't protect. And for the first time, they feel something they tried to avoid all along: loss. Not because you left, but because they finally see what you gave without conditions. This realization doesn't come with apologies or dramatic confessions. It comes with late-night thoughts, sudden emptiness, and the painful awareness that the heart they broke was the safest place they ever had. And by the time they understand it, you're already learning how to heal without them. Avoidants don't feel guilt immediately because their mind is trained to protect them from emotional overload. When conflict happens, their first instinct isn't reflection, it's distance. They convince themselves that leaving, shutting down, or going silent was logical, necessary, even justified. In that moment, guilt would require them to stay present with emotions they've spent a lifetime avoiding. So instead, they numb. They distract themselves, stay busy, rewrite the story so they appear calm and unaffected. But emotions don't disappear, they get delayed. Guilt arrives later when there's no crisis left to escape from. It shows up in unexpected ways: restlessness, regret, or a strange emptiness they can't explain. That's when the truth slips through their defenses. They begin to realize that what they called peace was actually avoidance, and what they escaped wasn't drama, it was responsibility. By the time guilt finally reaches them, the damage has already settled, and the person they hurt has learned to survive without their emotional presence. Emotional shutdown and emotional awareness may look similar from the outside, but internally they are complete opposites. When an avoidant shuts down, they aren't calm, they're disconnected. They stop feeling in order to feel safe, locking emotions away before they can overwhelm them. In shutdown mode, they believe silence equals control, distance equals strength, and vulnerability equals danger. Emotional awareness, however, begins when that control starts to crack. It's the uncomfortable moment they can no longer ignore what they feel or why they feel it. Instead of running, they start noticing patterns, the repeated losses, the same endings, the familiar loneliness. Awareness doesn't bring relief, it brings discomfort. It forces them to sit with emotions they once buried and recognize how their coping mechanisms protected them but also cost them real connection. This shift is slow and unsettling, because awareness means responsibility. It means accepting that shutting down didn't make them strong, it kept them emotionally stuck. And once awareness begins, going back to emotional numbness becomes impossible, even if they try. Regret for an avoidant doesn't come from the breakup itself. It comes from what happens after. It's triggered when they realize life moved on without them, not dramatically, but quietly. When they notice you no longer reach out, no longer react, no longer wait, the space they once craved stops feeling like freedom and starts feeling like emptiness. Small moments trigger it. A memory attached to a song, a habit they expected you to keep, a silence where your voice used to be. Regret grows when they see you healing, changing, becoming emotionally unavailable to them in the same way they once were to you. That's when reality hits. They understand they weren't replaced by someone else. They were replaced by yourself. Respect. The love they thought would always be there is gone, not because it faded, but because it was exhausted. And in that realization, regret settles in, heavy and unavoidable. Knowing the loss wasn't sudden, it was slowly earned. When an avoidant feels remorse but won't admit it, their behavior changes in subtle, confusing ways. They don't apologize directly, but they start watching from a distance, checking your social media, asking about you through others, or finding unnecessary reasons to reach out. Their messages feel cautious, almost scripted, as if they're testing emotional ground without risking exposure. You may notice sudden kindness, delayed honesty, or vague statements that hint at reflection but never fully take responsibility. They might reopen old conversations, bring up shared memories, or express concern in moments when it's no longer required. This isn't indifference, it's fear. Admitting remorse would mean confronting their role in the pain they caused, and that level of vulnerability feels unsafe to them. So instead, they hover emotionally, carrying regret silently. Their silence isn't peace, it's unresolved guilt wrapped in avoidance, trying to stay connected without facing the truth they're not ready to say out loud. Avoidants don't usually try to fix the damage in direct or emotionally open ways. Instead of clear apologies or honest conversations, they often attempt repair through indirect actions. They may reappear casually, act supportive without addressing the past, or behave as if enough time has passed to reset everything. To them, fixing the damage means restoring comfort, not revisiting pain. Facing the hurt they caused requires emotional exposure, and that feels threatening. Some avoidants convince themselves that reaching out gently is safer than acknowledging the wound. Others wait, hoping the connection will heal on its own without accountability. True repair demands consistency, vulnerability, and patience, skills many avoidants are still learning. So while the desire to fix things can exist, it's often overshadowed by fear of intimacy and responsibility. That's why their attempts feel incomplete or confusing. Without emotional honesty, repair stays surface level, leaving the deeper damage untouched and the other person feeling unseen once again. Their realization comes too late because avoidants understand loss only after safety is gone. While the relationship was still alive, they focused on protecting themselves, not the connection. They assumed love would wait, adapt, or shrink to fit their comfort. Realization doesn't happen during closeness, it happens during absence. When there's no one left to explain feelings, soften conflicts, or hold emotional space for them, clarity finally arrives. By then, the other person is no longer asking to be loved. They're learning how to live without needing it from the same source. Avoidants process emotions slowly because they've trained themselves to delay feeling. That delay costs them timing. When they finally understand the weight of what they lost, the relationship has already transformed into a memory. The tragedy isn't that they didn't care, it's that they cared too late. And love, once exhausted, rarely waits for late realizations to catch up. When guilt shows up for an avoidant, it often hides inside silence rather than words. They don't express it through apologies or emotional confessions, but through withdrawal that feels heavy and unresolved. Silence becomes a space where they replay conversations they avoided, moments they dismissed, and feelings they never voiced. They may go quiet not because they don't care, but because guilt forces them to confront emotions they don't know how to communicate. This silence can look cold from the outside, but internally it's loud, filled with self-justification, regret, and unanswered questions. They hesitate to reach out because guilt carries the fear of rejection and accountability. So instead, they stay still, hoping time will soften the weight they feel. But silence doesn't heal guilt, it deepens it. The longer they avoid expression, the more that quiet becomes a reminder of what they lost and the truth they never said. Your healing matters more than their regret because your growth doesn't depend on their awareness. While they may still be processing guilt, confusion, or loss, you're learning how to breathe again without waiting for emotional crumbs. Healing is the moment you stop needing them to understand your pain in order for it to be valid. It's choosing peace over explanations and self-respect over closure. Their regret, whether spoken or silent, belongs to their journey, not yours. You don't have to pause your life for someone who couldn't show up when it mattered. As you heal, you reclaim parts of yourself that were slowly shrinking to fit their comfort. You begin to trust your feelings again, set stronger boundaries, and recognize that love should feel safe, not uncertain. Healing doesn't erase what happened, but it transforms it. And in that transformation, you realize the most important realization isn't theirs, it's yours.